Absolutely.
Remove the ability for an executive to pardon anybody, and we don't have to talk about this anymore. Just don't break the law. It's that simple.
But it's not that simple.
Really?
So, yeah,
I think it's very
absolutely.
simple.
I'm sure you do in your position in life.
Hey guys, welcome to my brother's ballot, where your ballot is not just yours, it is all of ours, because we are in this together. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. So I was watching NewsNight, and the panel went up again about these Donald Trump pardons. Let's get into the clip.
A thought exercise for you. How would Donald Trump, Fox, and MAGA react if Joe Biden commuted the sentence of a notorious gang leader?
Oh, they would lose it. That's how they would react.
Someone serving life for murder and beatings and drug deals. Well, Trump did that tonight. Here's another one for you. How would Donald Trump, Fox, and MAGA react if Joe Biden conspired to pardon a left-wing militia convicted of kidnapping a Republican governor? Well, Trump is considering that tonight, but in reverse. It involves a plot against Gretchen Whitmer.
Will you pardon the people who are accused of conspiring to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer?
I'm going to look at it. I will take a look at it. It's been brought to my attention. I did watch the trial. It looked to me like somewhat of a railroad job. A lot of people are asking me that question from both sides, actually. A lot of people think they got railroaded.
No one from the left is saying that those militia folks got railroaded. No one's saying that.
You might recall that members of a right-wing militia were convicted of the kidnapping plot, which included weapons of mass destruction. The timing is interesting, though, since for the last 2 weeks, Trump and his allies have reacted this way to James Comey posting a picture of 8647 in seashells in the sand.
Whatever your politics, we cannot allow people to get by without being held accountable for this kind of public call to assassinate the president of the United States. I'm very concerned for his life, and James Comey, in my view, should be held accountable and put behind bars for this.
Now, to be fair, I do think, especially with all the turmoil that James Comey has been in, especially from 2016, he should just delete his Instagram. He should remove himself from public life. He's the reason that, well, part of the reason why we got Donald Trump in the first place, especially when he, let out that memo about Hillary Clinton being investigated or not being investigated so close to the election. Literally no one likes James Comey. No one likes James Comey.
I guess 2 weeks makes. But I think the principle here for Donald Trump, it seems, when it comes to pardons is if you're on my side of the ideological ledger, you'll get a pardon. If you're not, you won't. But when it comes to threats, they just don't seem to have a problem with, this was beyond threats. This was a plan. They were outside of her house. This was not just people talking.
Well, it's fair to throw the hypocrisy flag. It is certainly the case that people on the right would be very animated if the same thing were happening in the other direction. But it's also appropriate to look at the individual cases. And the case with Whitmer and these particular gentlemen is actually a little bit dubious. You had the feds who had to try twice in order to actually score the conviction. There's a lot about the conviction that looks a lot like these post 9/11 convictions, where you've got informants who are the actual people who in some instances are advocating most strenuously for people to take kind of insane action.
And this is where you have to be very careful, no matter your politics, because I agree with him here. It should be no shock to you. I'm no fan of any white nationalist militias because, this thing. But I still believe in their rights. I still believe that they should have a fair and speedy, just trial. And I don't believe in entrapment. If you are using informants to get your conviction, and those said informants are the ones that are pushing the plot forward, I truly think that's entrapment.
So it's worthwhile to take a look at this. There has certainly been a number of cases, especially related to January 6th, where you had over prosecution of particular people. So I don't know that the White House is out of bounds here. I think the challenge for the president is that in addition to these situations where it might be justified to offer a pardon, the president is also doing all manner of very strange stuff where people who are.
And speaking of the January 6th pardons, I'm not a fan of what happened on January 6th. I think it was one of the lowest moments in our country. But I agree with him when he says a lot of these Jan 6ers that were literally, some of them were just standing around, and yes, they were there because of a huge lie and some of them being misguided, but a lot of them got swept up. Not all of them were taking a dump on Nancy Pelosi's desk. Not all of them were beating police officers. And so on the flip side of that, when Donald Trump comes in and pardons everyone, again, just like with Doge, you came in with a sledgehammer when it should have been a scalpel.
Who are politically aligned with him and have criminal investigations and
When
prosecutions,
is it
have them
justified
disappear.
to offer pardon to a criminal that's been convicted? I don't care what president you are. When you offer pardon and you give it, it's unequivocal. Biden got fried like a chicken in a microwave by pardoning his son. Trump's getting fried right now. These are criminals. Either you just remove the ability for an executive to pardon criminals, or you deal with this in every administration.
I disagree with him there simply because, and I think everyone knows this, the justice system does not bat a 100. There are plenty of innocent people that are behind bars, plenty of people that have been railroaded, plenty of people that have died behind bars, have been executed, and they were innocent. And so I disagree with him in that manner. I do believe that presidents should have pardon power.
Except the executive is a criminal himself. I mean, he was convicted of 34 law, so that is a serious thing.
Himself right now.
Well, I don't think it matters, quite frankly. And these people were, it was not just, you're saying it's over prosecution, but the fact
I'm
of the
saying
matter
not all
is,
criminal convictions are the same.
fair
and
enough,
here
but the fact
feds
of the matter
literally
is
failed
most
the
people are
first
not
time.
going to dig into the
Yeah, but
minutia
they
of
didn't.
that.
Let's just to be clear, people were sentenced to long sentences for this, and it wasn't. Again, I said this at the beginning, but it bears repeating. They weren't just talking about this. They went to her summer home and surveilled the home. They had a plan that would have involved
blowing up
a bridge, injuring or perhaps killing people.
Agreed.
This was a very serious thing. I get informants are tricky.
I don't agree that he should pardon them, because they were already building this plan. The feds didn't come in and create this plan for them and then stick these informants in there and then they, say, you know what, never thought of it before, let's go get her. They were already planning this, and then the feds turned some of them to make the plan go forward. But when we have these discussions, no one talks about the justice system as a whole. I watch a lot of true crime, for instance. It always cracks me up where all of a sudden a jailhouse snitch is someone that can be credible. When it's in the benefit of a prosecutor, all of a sudden jailhouse snitches are great. They're upstanding citizens. Of course they're telling the truth.
But it is a normal part of law enforcement to utilize them so that they can catch people who have the intent to commit crimes.
Although
that is not a new thing.
But there's also, it's also
MAGA has a major right-wing militia problem. I'm from Oklahoma City. I was there when Timothy McVeigh blew up the federal building. And what's so insane about what has happened since then is we haven't reconciled this problem with right-wing militias, and they are all in Trump's big tent party now, and he's pardoned them. And it's a very dangerous movement in the American public. And
well, just a little background on that. Yes, Christopher Wray, former FBI director, has stated that one of the most grave dangers to American society is white nationalist movements.
You saw a daycare get blown up, and my state continually votes for a party that embraces right-wing militia, and pardoning all of those January 6 criminals is just despicable. I mean, we're either a country of the rule of law or we're not. And people die from this stuff. And these people are extreme, and they are welcome and excused by the president of the United States. And that is unacceptable.
Our own law enforcement agencies identify that right-wing white supremacists are one of the top threats to national security here in this country. And regardless of, again, I think people are not going to get into the minutia of the case. It's the message that it sends.
It's
the message that it is okay if you're plotting. But yeah, I understand
the specific cases do matter. And I think
this is such a interesting panel, because everyone is right, essentially. Kind of. Everyone's kind of right. So I do agree with Tiffany when she says this pardoning these people does send a message. But I can't think of the young man's name right here, but he's also saying, I understand that the messaging that it may be sending, but this case should be looked at simply because of how these charges came about. Tiffany's point is people don't read into the minutia of these cases. So all people will see is Donald Trump pardon these militia people, even though some of them should have probably been pardoned if that is the case. Some of them should have been pardoned.
They may matter in the minutia, but most of America is going to read the headline, not the story, and they're going to see if I can curry favor with this president.
Sure.
Then that matters.
And there she goes with making the point I just made.
Can I add one more specific case? I mean, there were a slew of pardons. Larry Hoover, one of the most notorious gangsters in the country and certainly in Illinois history, having his sentence commuted.
It's so hard not to yell out the Rick Ross song. They call me Big Meech, Larry Hoover.
Still facing a prison time on state
charges,
that a very, very long sentence. So he's not going anywhere for the time being. But why is Trump doing that? Other than that, people like Kanye West and others have called.
Well, I mean, his attorneys have attempted to get a commutation or pardon, I believe, since Obama's second term. I mean, so this isn't a new thing. The guy's 74 years old. His health is declining from what I have read. Yeah, he did some pretty horrible things, but should we keep the guy in prison for the rest of his life? He did a crime. He served the time. I think at a minimum.
Allegedly, he did many crimes. And the time that he was sentenced to was several life sentences. I'm not arguing. I'm not arguing. I just want people to understand the facts here because I think it's important. There are a lot of people in this country, as you know, who are facing very lengthy prison sentences for far, far less. And some of them Trump has actually pardoned, the First Step Act and now. But I'm really trying to understand, why does Larry Hoover end up at the top of this list?
Well, again, Abby, his attorneys have been trying to get a commutation for years.
Well, we know why. It's red meat to the black men that were foolish enough to vote for him. And to be fair, when I say foolish enough to vote for them, I don't mean that they're dumb. I think a lot of them were misled. But then, like the people like Lil Wayne and NBA YoungBoy that get pardons from him, trust me, if I was facing a jail sentence, put a MAGA hat on me. Put a MAGA hat on me.
Years now. It wasn't just Hoover. It was also the rapper, I believe, NBA YoungBoy got a pardon today as well. Look, you look at the criminal justice system, a lot of individuals who get over sentenced are typically black men. That's a fact. And I have no problem, I'm just going to be honest about this, with the president of the United States, happens to be a Republican, taking a look at some of these cases and said, I'm going to pardon or commute some.
And this is where I have an issue. Let's be very clear. Donald Trump is not doing this to right the wrongs of the American justice system against black men. It is red meat for the 25% of black men that voted for Donald Trump.
Some of these sentences.
Let me play also.
Biden didn't do it. Obama didn't do it. I'm going to give Trump credit.
But
I'm talking about Hoover in particular.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me play Donald Trump from just
Yeah,
a year and a half ago or so. Listen.
We're going to be asking everyone who sells drugs, gets caught selling drugs, to receive the death penalty for their heinous acts, because it's the only way. But if we don't get tough on the drug dealers, we're wasting our time. Just remember that. We're wasting our time. And that toughness includes the death penalty.
The only
So
way
which
to
one
resolve
is
The
it?
guy's been in prison
I mean,
a long
way
time.
is
He
to
served
not
a lot
allow
of
the
years.
executive to pardon anybody. If you are a criminal and you go to jail, it's because you broke the law. Now, if
No.
you don't like the
No, that's
fact
not
that
always
people
true.
can pick one.
Thank you, Sir Michael, for saying that. That's not true. I hate when people say that. Let's be very clear. The National Registry of Exonerations and Studies by the Innocence Project supports that 1 to 5% of people in jail are innocent of the crimes that they have been accused of. In 2014, a study by the National Academy of Sciences estimated that at least 4.1 people sentenced to death in the United States were likely innocent. So, Kevin, keep that quiet.
They've
one
never
or
been
the other.
wrongfully
You
convicted
can't
people.
tell me
Right, that's-
that you can decide one criminal is better than another in a pardon, or that their
Actually,
crime is not as deep
no,
as
I'm not.
another.
But it's just
If they can
absolutely.
remove-
What? What is he talking about? Are there not degrees in murder? Is there not degrees in assault, aggravated assault, misdemeanor assault? Like, what is he talking about?
And Kevin.
remove the ability for an executive to pardon anybody, and we don't have to talk about this anymore. Just don't break the law. It's that simple.
But it's
Don't
not
be a
that
cri-
simple.
Oh,
There,
really?
so yeah,
I think it's very
absolutely.
simple.
I'm sure you do in your position
break
in
the
life.
law.
But let me just tell you something that there are
Oh,
a
it's
lot of
okay to
people
break
in
the
this.
law.
If I can
No.
finish.
The way people love to make breaking the law so black and white, it blows my brain. Full disclosure, I was in a relationship with a police officer, and they were very much so a no-nonsense police officer. Didn't really give warnings or anything like that. And I asked them why. They said, you know, if I see somebody run a stop sign or run a red light, I normally don't give warnings because I know that you've done it before. You just never gotten caught. People break laws. People commit crimes every day and don't get caught. I am more than sure Kevin O'Leary has committed a crime, maybe has done a drug that was illegal. Allegedly, he's probably broken some kind of crime or done some kind of crime. And there wasn't anyone there to hold him accountable. But I guess because he didn't get caught, he's not a criminal. And again, the man that he is supporting, by definition, is a criminal. Donald Trump is a criminal.
Finish my point, and you can use these.
I don't know how you're going to
I'm
get
gonna,
there.
yeah. Well, if you listen, you might find out.
I'm
It is
dying to
not
hear it.
as simple. It is not as simple as if you don't want to go to jail, don't break the law. There are millions of Black people in this country who have been ensnared by a very punishing criminal justice system where they have been wrongfully convicted or unfairly sentenced in this
All
country.
of them? Every one of them?
Obviously not every one of them, but the same way that you can support a president who is convicted of crimes himself, there have certainly been people who have been sentenced to crimes that they did not commit or they were unfairly sentenced. That is why we have the First Step Act. But the reason.
Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you. And you see, he had nothing to say there. He had nothing to say there. Nothing to say.
reason we have the First Step Act is because there needs to be a second step. The First Step Act mainly focuses on federal policy, but there are a lot of people, over 1.1 million Black men remain in jail today. So this president is not, he's not vested in some
So
let me
you're
define
okay.
equity.
You're-
Don't tell me what I'm okay with, because I think I hear what I'm saying. But why don't
And I appreciate her bringing up that there are 1.1 million Black men in prison today. And if he were truly trying to right the wrongs of the justice system, he would be looking at a lot of these men, a lot of people that I know of, friends of mine, family members that have been in jail for 20 plus years for drugs, not unaliving anyone, but for drugs. And we can also thank Joe Biden for that, the 94 crime bill and the Clintons.
Stephanie, let me ask you a
and try to
question.
understand and have some empathy
Let
for
me-
the criminal justice system that have ensnared a lot of people.
Let me
unfairly.
ask you a question about the Larry Hoover of it all.
Yes.
I mean, do you think Trump is right to take the step that he did today? Or, I mean, I think some of this, I mean, you mentioned NBA YoungBoy, he's also in the past pardoned Kodak Black.
Lil Wayne.
They're trying to appeal to Black men.
Of course. Of
Okay,
course.
so is this about
There-
that?
And no shade, if you love Kodak Black, if you love Lil Wayne, if you love NBA YoungBoy, great, I'm happy for you. But let's be very clear. Kodak Black, Lil Wayne, and NBA YoungBoy doesn't represent any of the Black men that I know or any Black men that I'm in community with. If you truly want to effectuate and help Black men that have been affected by the justice system and the industrial incarceration system in this country, you really need to start on all those drug convictions where we have these people in jail for 20 plus years over drugs. The reason that these men here got the eyes and ears of the right and the Trump administration is because, one, they have the ears of a lot of young Black men that voted for Donald Trump, and they're rich and they have notoriety. And they represent a lot of people that don't read.
Or is it about
Their
Larry Hoover?
intentions are impure. But I will be honest with you, I'm fine with pardons. I kind of agree with you, Shermichael. Like if he's 75 years old, yes, because it's impossible when you think about the 230 plus people who were shipped offshore to a torture camp, when you think about this president who breaks the law routinely, convicted of 34 felonies right here in New York, when you think about the number of people, we've just decided in this country that these laws and these rules are pixie dust. The Constitution, who cares? Who cares about the Emoluments Clause? Give me this jet. Who cares about the 14th Amendment? So at this point, we have to ask, what is the law? So why do laws?
I get her sentiment and I agree with it 100%. But to me, the one thing that I can agree with MAGA on is that a lot of them were tired of getting the short end of the stick. Now, it is crazy that you choose to follow behind a person that has literally had everything handed to them, has literally failed forward, but that's neither here nor there. But I think it's a very fair point for the MAGA folks to say, yeah, it was very swampy. And I think the only difference between Donald Trump and a lot of presidents that have come before him, left, right, and center, he does it out loud. The only difference is Donald Trump does it out loud. Let's be very clear, because Joe Biden had a very controversial pardon as well. He pardoned Judge Michael Conahan. Michael Conahan served as a judge on the Luzerne County Court of Common Pleas in Pennsylvania. Conahan was implicated in a scheme where they accepted approximately $2.8 million in kickbacks from the builder and co-owner of for-profit juvenile detention centers. Now, do we think that that was okay? But you didn't hear anything from the mainstream media when that happened.
Apply to some people and not the other. So if it's time for Larry Hoover to say, yeah, fine, then pardon Larry Hoover, but also let's look at all the other cases instead of caging people like animals who have been in jail for decades, in prisons for decades, for a dime bag of marijuana. When I see white boys walking down my street in a gentrified neighborhood smoking it freely and openly, you have to wonder, yes, there is something wrong with our criminal justice system. Respectfully, it is not as simple as, well, if you don't want to go to jail, don't break the law. That is spoken from a place of privilege.
That is 1,000,000% true. We all know that there is no evidence to cite that black kids and white kids smoke weed at different rates. We know they smoke weed at the same rates, but if you look at the conviction rates of low-level marijuana charges, black people overwhelmingly receive them versus white folks.
And if you look at facts and history and data and statistics in this country, you will see that there are so many people. There are so many people who are in prison.
We do have to leave it there. We do have to leave.
Of course, you want to bring it back to the pardons because you know she bodied you. But anywho, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Peace.